Zoom with me. And the idea behind it is that we also stream it live to YouTube. And we're later on going to condense it into a video that's going to stay online so people can go back to it and reference it and learn that solo through this website that we've created. But we're basically recording the raw footage for it live on the spot.
Nice. So just going to shout that out again. We've got the tab, the link to the tab. Everyone on Zoom as well, you guys will already have the tab. Guys on YouTube, in that description, guitarvivo.com/MartinPDF, you'll be able to get the tab of what we're doing today.
Yes, that is correct.
I'm going to quickly swap my camera over so I don't look like I'm currently using the Mac one, which is great. But I'll swap that over in a second. While we give people like a couple of minutes to join.
Yes, that sounds good.
How about like a little update on the things you're working on? There's some cool things coming up.
Oh boy. Some of them I can talk about, some of them I can't. Like we're about to go on tour. We're going to do Luxembourg, Netherlands, Germany. Check my Instagram for those dates. That's going to be awesome. That's October. We're going to be playing at Guitar Summit. We're going to be hosting the jam night there, actually. So we're going to have a bunch of really, really cool guests on stage. I'm working on my first collaborative single with a wonderful, wonderful band that I cannot disclose yet. Original single that I'm working on. I'm working on new album music as well. I want to put out another record next year. Yeah, it's been pretty busy. Keeping busy. And of course, Luke and I are doing a bunch of stuff that hasn't seen the light of day yet. We're just making plans as we go.
Well, I suppose that's probably a good point to do a little bit of a plug on the cool stuff that we've already done.
Yes.
I know a lot of you guys have checked out the book. We're going to be referencing that today,
Yes.
simply because it's...
Go.
There you go. Modern rock guitar soloing. Basically, the book is kind of different to anything else because it's more conceptual. And as you'll see today, Martin's thinking is quite conceptual. That's one of the exciting things that I'm looking to dive into.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
So I think we're pretty good. We're pretty good for numbers on YouTube. Everyone in Zoom seems okay. Nothing in the chat looking like a red flag or anything. So we'll get straight into it. I think
let's do it.
One of the things I'd like to do before we actually get into the licks and solos is maybe we can run through a little bit of the background of the track. So I know loads of people are interested in, are you improvising? Is it composed? Like the actual timeline from the event, how long are you working on this? So we've got this track. This is from the 80s medley, right?
Yes, from the 80s medley. And it's completely composed. The idea was to have, like, Eye of the Tiger is such a great iconic track, but I feel like it severely lacks a proper guitar solo. So I wanted to write the guitar solo that it never had, so to say. Is the internet okay? Yeah. Your image just switched. Perfect. I basically want to give it that 80s guitar treatment, and what better way to infuse some 80s-ness into a piece of music than to write a dual guitar solo, right? So I wrote this harmonized piece, and what I'm going to teach today is actually the part that I'm playing. Nico Schliemann, my other guitar player, was playing the harmony part to that. I completely forgot how that went because I wrote it, sent it his way, and then never played it again. The idea behind the harmonization, just to briefly touch on that, was, though, to have a few lines harmonized in thirds, which is extremely common, but then also have a few lines an octave away from each other. To highlight certain notes, I would put the other guitar an octave higher than what I was playing, and then go back to the thirds. It's always bouncing back and forth between thirds and octaves. And then we go into the B section of the solo, and there the second guitar drops out and kind of turns into a classic guitar solo, which is just one single guitar.
So I think that's a really important thing to point out. I appreciate your honesty in talking about it being composed, because in this generation, there's kind of a little bit of deceit around that. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
What are the kind of influences that you bring to this when you're trying to write something for this setting? Are you thinking about people, or are you just kind of thinking about what you want to do in this moment?
I don't overthink that at all. I just do whatever comes to mind, you know. I just listen for the notes that I'm hearing. I think that's a big part of it. I approached, especially the harmonized part, I approached in a very non-guitar-y way. That there are not these typical guitar things, these guitar boxy types of things going on. It's just a melody that is harmonized and that happens to be played on guitar. But I'm just really looking for good notes to play, you know, notes that sound good against the chords that we're playing over, which we're obviously going to get into now.
And do you remember like how long it took you to write it? How long it took you to come up with it?
15 minutes tops.
Oh wow! Okay, okay.
It was really fast. Yeah, especially with like modern DAWs, you know, I can just record a couple ideas, then piece them together, render them out, send them via email, and you got a finished thing. Now then, to learn it and to perform it properly, that's a different thing, right?
Yeah.
Coming up with it was really quick with the modern tools that we have, and yeah, not a big issue at all.
So that process is you put a loop on, you listen for some ideas, or you just start kind of playing some ideas and then refine from there?
I tend to I want to control myself when I begin the creative process a little bit, and I tend to not just start noodling, but I try for the first thing that I do to be something that is a genuine creative idea that comes from within me and not from my exterior muscles, you know? So I try to listen to what's inside of my head to get a more musical foundational idea, if you will. Not that it necessarily turns out more musical. Sometimes you don't have a great idea to begin with, but I find that when I ditch the guitar and go to my mind first, I tend to come up with something that is a little bit more genuine and interesting and musical.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's get into the track. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about key and chords for this first bit that we're going to look at?
Yeah, so we're in the key of C minor, and let me bring up the tablature. By the way, if you haven't grabbed the tablature, I'm going to be referring to the tablature, to specific bars, to specific chords within that tablature, and it's going to be a major advantage if you can follow along. The link is in the description, or it has been sent out to you via email if you have been signed up to this, right?
If you've already got it by email, we did an update on it today, which is putting some chord symbols. So if you want that with the chord symbols, I'll put the link in the chat.
Last minute as always. Yes. Okay. So
okay, cool. So yeah, from the top.
The whole thing is in C minor. We're looking at two major sections. The first section goes from the 1st to the 8th bar, and the second section from the 9th to the 17th bar. The first section is actually the verse of the song, and the second section, the chorus of the song. And we're looking at a bunch of slash chords for the first section. So obviously it starts in C minor, like this. Is that loud enough? I'm sure I should crank that a little bit. Let's see.
A little bit, please.
Yeah. All right, and it has that stomping quarter note rhythm in the bass, and has that C minor chord on top. Let me just tune up really quickly. I haven't gotten around to doing that yet.
While he's tuning up, the format of this is we're going to go through this solo. If you guys have questions about anything, just whack it in the chat, whack it on YouTube, and I will feed those in as quickly as I can. But also, we're going to make time at the end to be a little bit broader. So if you've got general guitar questions,
absolutely,
you'll get a chance to ask those as well. General guitar composition, whatever you want to ask Martin, we'll make sure we make time at the end to hit everything.
Absolutely. All right, so first chord, C minor, stomping quarter note bass. Boom, bam, bam, bam. Then we hit the first slash chord. That is an A flat over C, okay? Now what that is, if you don't know, is it means you keep the C bass and you put an A flat major triad over it. It goes something like this. If you have your C minor fretted like this, maybe, I use my thumb and put my 3rd finger on the 10th fret D string, and then bar my 1st finger over the 8th fret G and B string like this. But you can also use a regular bar chord like this, whatever you feel like. Hang on a second, I'm just making sure I record my guitar. Yes, we're recording. All good. if you have that C minor chord, all you need to do is put that A flat on top of it. Turn the G into an A flat. That gives you the second chord. And the third chord would be B flat triad over C, like this. Oh, was that you? I just got a notification from Zoom.
Oh, that could have been me.
All right, cool. Gives us the third chord, B flat major over C. And then back to C minor, and that's 4 bars. Sorry, I'm having a few glitches here in the audio. I hope it's not too bad for you guys. I'm gonna actually play the whole 4 bars in a loop for you so you can follow along. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that sets the backdrop for the first section. And we're going to look at the first bar now. The opening phrase goes something like this. Okay, that starts on the 8th fret B string. I'm using my 3rd finger, I would say. I can also use my 4th finger. You'll find that I take quite a few liberties with these types of things, what kind of fingerings I use, what positions I use. I kind of have the musical idea in my head. I know what the notes are, and then I kind of take some liberties with the phrasing, fingerings, positioning, all that kind of stuff. Usually, though, my go-to would be the 3rd finger, and I slide into that from 2 frets below like this. Yeah? And then I play 6 and 8. Then I play a little bit of pentatonic here. And I have this little grace note pull off from G to F. I insert this little F sharp here, and I pull off really quickly to give it a bit of a, it's almost like a Spanish guitar, classical guitar kind of cliche. You don't hear that too often in electric, I find. Yeah, so Spanish guitar is kind of my inspiration behind that. Let me play the first phrase again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's our C minor bit. And also that goes over the A flat over C. And then we go into a run that leads into the B flat over C. And that run goes like this. And here we can kind of get into the first concept. Like that first line was kind of a straight up C minor pentatonic thing. And that next run with that chromatic note inserted, that run leading up into a target note, that's kind of a thing I do a whole lot. And that's something we also talk about in our book, Modern Rock Guitar Soloing. Let me plug that for you real quick if you're interested in that. Here we go. Luke is cheering up right now. So
well, actually, wait a second. We've missed a concept. There was already something you said already that I know is a huge part of your playing.
Yes.
I think.
Go for it.
What are the first 2 chords? We got C minor going to
A flat over C.
A flat. Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's a really key point. What's the target note you're hitting on that A flat?
I actually go for the 6 on that one.
Okay, so one of the things we talk about in the book is that your target note for playing the changes aren't just triads.
Yeah.
For that chord, you're trying to hit a certain color tone and put an extension on that chord that isn't as cliche as if you were to hit maybe the third.
I find that we can talk about this. We talk about this in the book. I find that for the 6 chord in a minor progression or the 4 chord in a major progression respectively, you can take a few more liberties. It almost sounds bad to hit the root note or the octave on that, I find. So if it were to be, if I were to target the root note, it would sound like this. That sounds fine, but it doesn't sound as colorful as the 6, right? So yeah, I feel like this is kind of a scenario, I think, where my ears have guided me. I don't think it was a conscious decision here to target the 6. I think it's one of those things where if I have the 6th chord in a minor progression, I want to hear something other than the root note oftentimes. Although that is also completely fine. I think the phrase sounds good if you did this as well. If you hit the root as well. That sounds fine too. It just, the interesting thing is, as you saw, I was kind of improvising how I would when I write a solo like that. And it sets you on a completely different trajectory, right? Instead, I would go, because then the phrase leads me up, right? I would probably keep moving up if that were the case. And that's kind of how the second part of the A section goes anyway. We'll get into that in a second. Yeah, but I don't think that was much of a conscious decision to hit the 6 there. I think that's just a natural thing. I was playing around with the pentatonic there. That's the note I happened to land on. The next chord change is super duper conscious though, with that run. Yeah, I'm starting in C minor. And I land on the 5th of B flat on the downbeat. If I didn't insert that chromatic note, the line wouldn't resolve. It would go like this. It wouldn't land on a target note. Yeah, it wouldn't land on a chord tone. So it's almost a necessity because I want to have a continuous line. I want to have continuous 16th notes, but I want to at the same time land on a target note. So the only thing I could do to remedy that is to either insert a chromatic note or start from a note lower. I could start from the 7th, for instance, on C minor. I could start on this note. But to me, that doesn't sound as interesting as to add one of those blue notes, you know? Blue guitar.
So is that a chromatic approach?
That is a chromatic approach, yeah, onto a target tone. And that's something that gets, if you go through jazz college like I did, that is something that gets drilled into your brain firmly. It's something you won't be able to do without. You would do all these chromatic embellishments, like for example, if you have that C minor chord, you would learn to chromatically embellish all these target notes. So that's something that is completely natural to me. It's kind of something that maybe sets me a little bit apart from other rock guitar players. Like I always say, I'm more of a rock guitar player with a jazz influence as opposed to a jazz player with a rock influence. And I feel like among rock guitar players, that is something that's not too commonly used. Rock guitar players tend to be more diatonic, I feel like. And that's not a bad thing. That's just something where I come from. It's a natural evolution of having been put through jazz college in my formative years. So anyway, yeah, you do that run up the scale from the 5th fret on the G string, completely diatonic, meaning using the notes of the C minor scale. Then you insert that major third, but don't think of it as a major third. It'll confuse the hell out of you. You'll be like, what scale is that? I have a root, I have a second, I have a flat 3, I have a third. Is that the whole tone, half tone, diminished Hungarian, Mongolian, whatever? No, it's not. It's just a chromatic passing tone that leads you to the 5th of the next chord. I'm playing the root note here on B flat instead of C minor to make the change a little bit more obvious. It sounds a little more disguised because the bass is actually banging away on that low C, right? So that is that. And then if you look at that run, we would now be in bar 3. The descending run goes like this. It starts out with a descending B flat triad like this. Yeah, we have the 6th fret on the B string. That is the 5th of B flat major. And you'll find that I mostly refer, it's actually kind of funny. I've just filmed a secret, yet to be announced guitar course that is more targeted at beginners. And I had to use fret numbers and strings. So I had to say B string 6th fret. So I'm still in that zone kind of, because that just happened the other week. But usually I would refer to notes either as the interval relative to the key or the chord. So if we're in the key of C minor, but our chord is B flat major, I'd often refer to this as the 5th. Or I would refer to the actual note name, so other instrumentalists can have a conversation with me as well. So this would be either F in my book or the 5th of B flat major, right? You go from the 5th to the 3rd on the G string, to the root on the D string, to the 5th on the A string. So that is a straight up triad plus extra note. We double the 5th. And then I go down diatonically, pass through the 4th, the 3rd, the 9th, and end on the root. Right? We have a mix of a triad and a little bit of a scalar section. And it's obviously attached to a rhythmic motif. We have a dotted 8th and a 16th. Bop, ba-dap, 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 which kind of gives us this bouncy rhythm, okay? It goes like this. One more time. I'm going to count in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it ends on C minor, obviously resolves to C minor, and I do this little pentatonic phrase. And I apply a little bit of muting and aggressive vibrato to really hammer that thing home. So shall we just really briefly play what we got so far, Luke? What do you think? Or do you want to talk a little bit about
Sorry, just a quick question. So this idea of target note, someone's asked, a target note, can you define that? Is that any note you want, or does it have to be a chord tone?
Yeah, in this case, I mean, you can target a 9th if you wanted to. We targeted a 6 earlier. It can technically be anything you like. I think what qualifies it as a target note is actually the line leading into it. The way you set up the line that ends on that note is really what defines the target note, is that landing spot. Oftentimes, not always, that'll be on a rhythmic downbeat. For instance, you'll have a line that goes dabba 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 ba, and then resolves. I think it's the sorry, I'm a bit under the weather. I think it's the resolving nature of that final note that defines it as a target note. Would you agree with that, Luke?
Yeah, so it's more the intention and the approach that you by making those things happen, it becomes a target note. And yes, anything could be. You target 9ths, you target 11ths, you target major 7ths.
If I play a C minor line like this, there's a clear target note there, right? But it's the 9th of the chord. It's not a chord tone. It's a color tone. Yet that whole
and that's intentional.
That whole line is set up to resolve to that note. It's always interesting when you come up with these examples on the spot. You kind of have to get an example that is absolutely perfect. So what I tried to do here, I tried to have an ascending melodic line through a scale. But I also try not to be too obvious with that by inserting a bunch of intervallic jumps. Here we have the jump from the 5th to the 7th. And then I enclose the target note. That is something we talk about in the book a lot. I enclose my target to really hammer home the point that it is a target note. I approach it from below and from above, and then go down a half step, and I have my target note there. I could also do the previous trick and insert a chromatic note like this. That is a different vibe then. Both great. Both can be used creatively. I think what really is, I just want to hammer that point home one more time. What really sells it is the intent. You need to be wanting to do this. It needs to be an intentional decision. That's what makes it sound confident, makes you get away with these chromatic notes, etc. You know, chromaticism is not, there is a degree, can be a degree of randomness in it, but if you want to get away with it, you better make sure you stick the landing.
Well, that's it. Okay. That was a bit of a plug. Yeah, there's a chapter in the book on sticking the landing, which is essentially this.
Exactly.
But really, the other thing is that strong rhythmic setup really helps sell the sound. If you went for like a 9th or an extension, but you're kind of, what's the word? A little bit apprehensive in how you approach it rhythmically and a little bit wavering in your conviction, the same lick could fail.
It's the same thing as when you hear somebody speak publicly. You can immediately tell how confident they are by their body language, by their eye movement, by their choice of words. Like the smallest giveaways would tell you whether somebody's in a confident state or not. And it's the same with guitar playing. There's little telltale signs that suggest to you whether the player you're listening to is confident or not, right? It's a big part of making your audience feel comfortable. Yeah, you don't want to be listening to somebody who feels uncomfortable, because that makes you feel uncomfortable in a way, right?
Exactly. So did you want to play up to where we've got? So we
yeah,
can
let me play that
together.
one more time really slow for those who want to follow along and want to skip over all the chit chat. Here's the first 4 bars or 3.5 bars. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's section 1. Then, while we're talking about target notes, I play these little scalar runs next. I never get these right on the first try. That was from the wrong note, sorry. Here we go. You start on the flat 6, okay? And then you go up 3 notes per string, 6 tuplets. 1, 8, 9. And it's really important when you play these fast runs that you count. Rhythm is really king here. If you want to sound convincing playing these runs, you're going to sound really, really messy if you don't resolve these things rhythmically. Doesn't matter if you skip a note, if your pick doesn't hit a note perfectly, but if the starting and the ending is kind of really lined up with the rhythm, you're going to get away with it. So let me count this. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. Yeah, that is, I'm just seeing a question there in the call. That is alternate picked. So I'm starting with the downstroke. 1. So I'm going down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And for me, it's really important to be on a downstroke on that last note, so I can play that with conviction, right? I want to really, pow. Yeah, Farhan, I don't think I'm cross-picking that. I think that's pick slanted, actually. Certainly it is at the full tempo. I think that's not cross-picked. I don't cross-pick at those speeds, really. But this is all laid out on the fretboard, so it can be easily pick slanted. So you'd have to change your slant. A couple notes will be upstroke escape, a couple notes will be downstroke escape, to use Troy Grady's recent terminology. Now the idea is that as the top note of the chord progression goes up like this. I kind of mentioned this earlier. We have our C minor triad here, 5th on top. We go to the A flat major triad by putting the top note as a flat instead of G. And then you take the whole triad up a whole step. And that gives you this ascending melody within the chord, right? If you go through the inversions. And I've kind of tried to portray that within this 3 note per string run. So you start on the flat 6 and go up to the 5th. Then you start on the flat 7 and go up to the flat 6. And lastly, you start on the root and you go up to the flat 7, which happens to be the root note of those chords. So first you land on the 5th of C minor. The next run lands on the root of A flat major, and the last run lands on the root note of B flat major. So it really portrays that ascending melody within the chords, right? And I add this little melody to make it not too mechanical. And then I conclude the phrase with this. Or with a bend. Because I always try to make these things organic. If I use such an obvious device, such as these runs, I try to put something in there that offsets that super predictable structure with a little something that is not too mathematical, if that makes sense. Yeah?
Yeah, I remember there's an example in the book where you play something ridiculous and you end it with like a blues cliche.
Yeah.
And what that does is instantly brings the idea back into the world of the listener.
Yes.
And like gives them context. And it's kind of like tension and resolution within like stylistic tension and resolution. I'm playing something linear, semi-mathematical, but then I bring you back into the world you know.
I fully agree with that. It's all a matter of using contrast. Yeah, if you want to talk about the world of arts, if you're going to paint only with one color, chances are your image or your painting is going to get very boring. And you can develop contrast through various methods. We talk about meta soloing in my book. Like you could create contrast by playing low and then high. You can create contrast by playing quiet and loud. You can create contrast by playing clean and distorted. And here I'm using contrast by doing something that is very predictable and mathematical with something that is just very heartfelt, for the lack of a better word. Yeah, makes sense? So let me just break down maybe these fingerings for the... Or you want to say something? Sorry. Yeah.
No, I was going to say... about how you've embellished that really simple rising kind of voice-led motif going through the A flat. With that embellishment, people still hear that continuity of the rising line.
Yeah.
Going from that, you're on the fifth of the B flat. What does your line start on? Fifth of the B flat to the root of the A? No, that can't be right.
So let's clarify this. The line starts at the tail end of the fourth bar on the flat 6, and then.
Oh, sorry. I just want to talk about that rising line.
Yes.
Is that fifth of C minor to the root of A flat? Is that what you're?
Yes. So fifth of C minor, root of A flat, root of B flat, and each one of those lines.
That's another concept. Yeah. In those two chords that you do a lot, which is I don't know how you do this in real time, but you outline the one changing note between the harmony.
You highlight the half step. I try to highlight the half step differences between two chords.
So between those two chords, there's only one note lost, one note changed.
Yeah,
right?
And that's the one you want to highlight because that is literally the only difference between those two chords. And in order to outline the harmony efficiently, you go for that note because that note really highlights the difference between those two chords. You can also do the opposite and try to make your line blend in more by staying on a note that is common to two chords. It's a different result. And like the deeper you study music, the more you can use these kind of devices to your psychological advantage.
So those of you that have the book, that's concept 16, common and distinct notes. I think what people would find if you go back through some of the solos you guys have learned and you hear those real money notes, you'll find that a lot of the time, like when you hear a note, it's just like so smooth with the chord change and so impactful. They might be doing that distinct note theory.
And if you're in the rock and pop world or whatever, chances are that note is going to be the third of the chord. I find
or in the blues as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the change between the one chord or the seventh. You know, like that. You start like you have a C7, and then you follow up on F7, like that. You know. Yeah, you're just hitting all those thirds and sevens. It's just so satisfying, you know.
Nice. I derailed us. What were you going to say? Did you want to play through? Or you want to go through fingerings?
Just actually break down the fingerings and maybe the picking directions of that run, so we can totally clarify that.
Got a question about the picking directions, but I think the question is basically, how much care do you approach this with, or will you kind of vary it depending on mood and stuff? Is it totally? Are they really intentional choices?
Yeah, I mean, I've practiced every kind of permutation of picking there really is, so it doesn't really matter to me. Like, I wasn't aware that apparently on the recording I played it like this instead of... God, no, I can play both. I've practiced both fingerings, you know, starting with different fingers. Should still be able to do it, you know. So let me break down the actual notes. So we're starting on the flat 6 on the first run, and then go up 3 notes per string of the C minor scale. And if you don't know that C minor scale, then it's too early to practice this. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. If you don't know what it is, don't worry about practicing it yet, okay? So again, flat 6, 3 notes per string up to the 5th. Then start the next run. So in the tab, it says I'm starting on the 8th fret D string, and I go up like this. Oftentimes I'll play it like this, starting with my second finger on the flat 7 of the D string, going up 2 notes on the D string, and then on the G string to the B string, and I have 2 notes on the B string, right? And then lastly, the last bit of the run would start with my 4th finger on the root note and go up to the flat 7. And ends with that little blues line. So I think we got that covered. Yeah?
Yep.
That concludes the harmonized part, the A section. We can go into the B section, which is where it's getting a little more interesting, I feel like.
Awesome. Which one question that someone's asked, do you angle the pick in the fast runs and sweeping? So do you want to talk about a little bit about what you're doing there with, can you just define cross picking and pick slanting briefly?
Yeah, so there's basically 2 ways of picking that I use. This would be the cross picking method, where I swivel the pick almost, and it bounces around, and every pick stroke that I do clears over the string, and I can make a pick change. And the other method would be that I set my pick at a certain angle, and and I have to change the angle of the pick at the end of each, on the last note of each string, according to whether I'm leaving the string on a downstroke or an upstroke. So for instance, on the last 2 strings, if we just dissect that string change, I would be starting with an upstroke on the G string and end up with a downstroke on the last note. That's what I really want, right? I want to end up with a downstroke on the last note because I want to give that an accent. So what I do is down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And you'll see that the last note, the only thing that really matters is the last note on every string. The last note on the G string in this instance would be an upstroke, which means we have to do with an upstroke escape, which means I angle my pick facing down, so the upstroke clears into the air and I can smoothly go to the next string. Yeah, like that. I'm actually gonna, when I loop this, I'm gonna add a note because I want to resolve it rhythmically. Ba 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 ba. Yeah, and that position of the pick gives me clearance to go to the next string, if that makes sense. All right, moving on.
One sec, before we move on, I would like to just to add some extra value. I'd like to give this quote, because you do a lick like this in the book, and you sum it up really nicely. You do a lick that's inspired by Steve Morse, and you basically say, this approach to me consists of having a target note and then working backwards from that to create a lick. Yes. And that's something you can do, like creatively. You guys can go and, like that lick, you could add an extra beat on and start somewhere else, or you could add in different things. You can try and start later in the bar, but the general concept is take a target note and then approach it any way you want and be rhythmic, I suppose.
Yeah, you just have to be, you can be quite mathematical about it. You have your downbeat here, and then you're going to go, I'm going to play 6 tuplets. So I'm going to need 6 notes prior to that. So this ends up being my 1, you know? So you count backward. This is your target note, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you want to play, let's say, 8th notes, you have the downbeat here, and then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you go like that. And that resolves you on the 5th. But to be honest, I'm not too mathematical about it. I've played so much that I kind of feel like where I have to. I have an instinct for where I have to start to know where I'm going to end up.
And that's come from cold hard practice of all these different permutations, all these different rhythmic figures.
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. Should we go on then?
Yes. So we're going to the B section now, and the progression is mostly going to be looking like this. We have F minor, G major over, E flat over G major, which is a third in the bass. It's an E flat major chord, but G in the bass. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then B flat major. Okay, play that one more time. We have an entire bar of F minor, and then half a bar of E flat over G and B flat. So 1, 2, 3, go. And that goes 3 times. And then we have that last phrase that goes and 2 bars of A flat major, and then the solo ends there. One thing I want to really stress is be aware of the chords that you're playing over, right? It's the note choices I make are not random. They're closely tied to the chords that I'm playing over. In the similar fashion that I want to be aware of the rhythm that I'm playing over and the kind of beat that I'm playing over, or the style that I'm playing over, I want to be aware of the harmony that I'm playing over. So before I even sit down, I want to know what the chords are, right? If you haven't studied that with the track, take a couple minutes, analyze the chord progression, play around with it, listen to the sound of the chords, listen to how the chords connect. For example, listen to the bass line here. It's not this. Sorry. Yeah, the bass doesn't jump around like that. It's actually voice-led very beautifully by going up a whole step to the next chord and hitting the third of that chord. And those are all things that kind of inform the way I solo and the way I choose my notes and what have you. Okay? So targeting the first chord, F minor, we have a little line that leads into that. And here we can talk about enclosures again. I'm starting a diatonic note above the notes that I want to target. Then I move below it, get back up into it, and then hit the minor third of the F minor chord. And if that's something you want to practice in isolation, you can practice that with the other chord tones. So that's the third. Target from above and below. Let's do the same thing with the root. Let's do the same thing with the seventh. Let's do the same thing with the fifth. And then it takes us back to the third. And that really characterizes the chord, right? Any of those will do. But I feel like the third is the most melodic sounding for a rock context, okay? Let me have a look at what I'm actually playing here. Okay, leads into this note. Have a run, a scalar run leading down to the E flat, just as the E flat chord hits. Like this, and then the line actually follows the chord down from the fifth to the third. Root, fifth, third. Somebody's asking whether this is live. You just saw that it was live. So here I'm targeting once again the root, then go down the fifth, down to the third. And just as the B flat chord hits, I hit the third of that as well. So that explains this line. Yeah, E flat, B flat. Playing nothing but chord tones. 5, 3, sorry, I have a total brain fart now. Root, 5, 3, 3 of B flat. The whole part one more time. Like this. Any questions about that, Luke? What do you think?
I think there's questions about getting into that, right? So we're looking at 2 changing chords, and we're talking about being able to shift mentally what you're assigning, like each note as for the different chords, right? So one note is the fifth when it's on E flat, but it's something else on the next chord. Just to go off topic a little bit to help people out, is there like a really fundamental exercise that people could do to help them with that?
Yeah, let's say
Well, actually, sorry. I think there's the other question is, if you're visualizing, are you visualizing the root as changing in different scale shapes as the chords change, or are you always seeing the same scale shape?
Most people, when they're not too familiar with playing over chord changes, they'll treat the whole thing as C minor, right? But I treat every single chord as a different scale, almost as a different key. Yes, the keys are related, but I almost don't think about it like that. I almost pretend they're a different key. That's how strongly I try to make that distinction between the different chords. So when the chord is F minor, my note choices will be something along those lines. Then we go to E flat major. And then to B flat major. So I treat everything as a different world. Now I'm really moving across the fretboard here, but you can do it in a very narrow range as well. So I'm trying to, let's say I take 4 notes or 8 notes. Let's see what works best. I try to characterize the chords with my note choices. Yeah, I could be meandering around in C minor. And that is a lot of fun to be had, but if I go, let's do 8th notes. Yeah, you characterize the chords a lot more, and I do the same when whether I improvise or compose. It doesn't matter, right? These are all the notes from the same scale. They're literally the same notes, but the way you accent them when you think about them as almost as if they were a different key is a whole different thing. Okay, let me play those first couple of notes for you one more time. 1, 2, 3. This is where we land on the B, and then I go down, and this little run leads me back into the minor third of the F minor, once again targeting from above and from below. It's an ongoing theme here, these enclosures. Then it gets a little spicy. I have this little, forgot one note there. I have 2 chromatic passing tones in here. The first one is down here, and I start on the minor third of F minor, and I pull off to the root note on my first finger, like this, and then I go up something that Luke and I call the tetratonic, which is I pick a triad plus an extra note. In this case, it's the F minor triad plus the 9th. And then I have a little bit of pentatonic in there. I throw in the 4th of the F minor chord and the 7th as well. And then I go up the scale, insert a chromatic note on top. By the way, for those who want to read along with the tablature, we're currently going from bar 11 to bar 12. I put in that chromatic note on the 14th fret, leading to the 15th fret on the downbeat. And that leads me to E flat major. I'm hitting the 3rd on the downbeat. Textbook example of how to transition from one change to the next. So like this. We're going to play the whole line one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gets us to the major third on the downbeat, okay? Once again, chromatic note here, and chromatic note on top. One more time. Like that.
And just to reiterate for those who are joining us now, that because we always get questions about this, about outside notes and chromaticism. It's nothing magical right there. We're not doing any kind of substitutions or anything like that.
No.
You just know where you want that line to land, and you know that you need to add in notes to set yourself up for that landing.
Okay, yeah, let me just give you an example of what it would sound like if it didn't add that last chromatic note. I would land on this note instead. And that sounds like a freaking accident. So you gotta put in that extra note so you can land correctly.
Or you can start exactly 1/16th note later, which would be a lot.
You can do that as well. Yeah, tons of options. So then,
awesome. So
yeah,
this is those of you following along. This is concept 14, enclosures, and I forget where chromaticism is the earlier one. Those of you following along, chromaticism is concept 7. So if you want to look those up.
Very nice. Then we have this little thing. That's kind of a Paul Gilbert thing, really. A Paul Gilbert tetratonic, if you will. We have a triad spread out across 2 strings. So on the G string and the G string, we have the notes G and B flat, which are the 3rd and 5th of our chord, E flat. And then we have the root, 2nd and 3rd on top. And it's really cool because you can add a lot of rhythmic precision to that. It sounds very different from when you sweep that, because you really have that. You have that accentuation from the pick hitting on the downbeat with a downstroke. It really keeps the rhythm grounded. In this case, it's a little slur though. It's funny that that is transcribed, because I'm not sure I intentionally played that. My finger must have rolled off. I wasn't even sure that I was doing this. I thought I was doing this. Instead of... But you never know. You know, these transcriptions, they just spell out the truth. This is probably the hardest thing to do in this solo. The lick you just heard me play. It may not be the fastest or consistently fastest thing, but it's something that can be quite tricky to pull off rhythmically. The funny thing is, I use the exact same chromatic embellishment or chromatic target. How would you say it? Chromatic passing tone as down here, where I go from the minor 3rd to the root. Here I go from the 5th to the 3rd of B flat major. And just as the chord changes, I hit the 3rd. That's really a lot of, yeah, Luca mentioned this before, money notes. These money notes, when you hit that 3rd on the downbeat, it's going to sound good. That note is represented in the chord. You can literally not go wrong with playing the 3rd on the downbeat. In fact, you can play just the 3rd on the downbeat on all the changing chords. And if your chord progression is very busy, it's going to sound amazing. Because it's almost like paint by numbers at this point. If you're really good at visualizing the fretboard and finding those notes, it really becomes a paint by numbers game. You can almost not go wrong, okay? So let me reiterate that. We're here on the 13th fret, which is the 5th of B flat major, and we roll 4 fingers down to the 3rd on the 10th fret. And then I do something, actually, I just noticed a mistake in the transcription, I believe. Or I have since adapted things differently. Let me think about this. I could swear I do this. But the transcription says that's something I definitely don't do. That's a mistake that slipped by me. So we can still change that, right, Luke? We can update this and...
Yeah, I think someone said there might be some chords that... what's it, bar 6 or something that I need to double check. I added those in very hastily.
Yeah.
5 minutes before the session.
I'm going to show you how exactly I play it. We're still playing over B flat major, and we have this descending bit. That's all correct. I target. Oh yeah, it's correct, but there's a note missing there. All right, so I go down the triad, have the fourth as a passing tone, and land on the third, and then I go up like this. I think what might have happened is that I played a little sloppy, and it got, because of that, Levi, the transcriptionist, might have not notated it. I'm going to show you now what I intended to play. I intended to play.
So this is the director's cut. These are the notes that didn't make the final video.
Notes that, it's often there's a, when somebody transcribes, they transcribe what really happened, not what I wanted to happen. It's just how it is. So I start this little sweep on the third of this B flat major arpeggio that you all know. Everybody knows that one. But I start on the third, and unlike with this type of sweeping, you really have a specific rhythm and a specific target note. So I do start on the third in 6 tuplets, and then I go straight into a picking run without hammers or pull-offs, but I just keep picking. So you could call this directional picking, economy picking. I go down, 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 and then down, up on the top string. And the thing that's really cool is often what you find is that there's a huge distinction between the sound when somebody plays arpeggios and when somebody plays a scale run. And with this, I kind of blend the two. Like this. It sounds kind of seamless. So that's something I love to do. And it's very specific rhythmically, because you end up on the 13th fret on the downbeat, which is the root of F minor. Now, let me clarify. All of this may sound extremely cerebral and like there's a ton of maths going on in the background, but the truth is this stuff comes to me naturally because I studied these concepts so much. I understood that these concepts are things that so many great compositions and so many great solos abide by, and I basically studied those laws, and by now these laws, while they were initially very head focused, they've become a completely instinctual thing for me. So I didn't know that I was landing on the root there, but my instinct told me to go for that note, if that makes sense, right? So that run is kind of cool. Nice economy picking, a bit of scalar picking combined with arpeggio picking. Very Gambale type thing, Gambale light. Let's see what comes next. Luke, you got any questions so far about this?
No, I was resisting the temptation to make the Frank Gambale plug of because I'm bringing him over to England next week.
Go for it.
He's doing a master. Well, if you go to guitarvivo.com, you can see we've got a masterclass weekend with Frank Gambale next weekend in the UK, of all places.
Yes. Okay, moving on. We're once again, this whole thing, it's kind of, this is a very interesting thing. I'm going to ask the chat here. From bar 9, F minor, E flat over G, B flat major, and A flat later as well. Bar 9 to 17, what key are we in? Does anybody know? I want to ask the chat here. And if you're replaying this and you're rewatching this, I'm asking you as well, what is the key?
What was that again? What bar?
9 to 17. Refer to the tablature, please. Link is in the description. Or if you're on the website, the link is down there, or we'll probably have sent it via email to you.
Right, we've got some answers coming in. I'll read them out. We've got E flat major, C minor, E flat major, E flat major, E flat major, E flat, C minor.
Yes, it's E flat major. You could make a strong case that this is an E flat major because that's kind of the chord that has the most resting power. But we're still using the notes of C minor, right? Even though there's not I just want to point this out because there's not a single C minor chord in there, but we're still using the notes of C minor, right? We're still in that same key as before. Doesn't matter. A very popular misunderstanding is, for example, that a song like Get Lucky, which is B minor, D major, F sharp minor, E major. What key is that in? B minor, D major, F sharp minor, E major. Chet, I'm asking you, what's the key?
What have we got?
I can tell who took some lessons with me here.
Well, it's got to be Eddie. F sharp minor, A major, B Dorian.
You see, the fact that we get like 7 different answers tells you that it is not as obviously as it may seem. It's F sharp minor, right? The whole thing starts in the 4 chord, goes to the 6, then goes to the 1, then goes to the 7. The point being made here is that you can be in a key center and the actual chord doesn't appear. The actual chord of the key center doesn't either appear at all or not for a very long time. Like you could be setting up a resolution for 32 bars until it resolves, right? And this is kind of the case with Eye of the Tiger. You're not really ever hitting that C minor. You're hitting the E flat major, but with a third in the bass. And the third in the bass does not have a sense of resolution. You wouldn't end the song like this, but instead you would do... Touching us all with the eye of the tiger. And then go back to C minor, right? That resolves. The same with Get Lucky. You would not resolve that on B minor. It sounds freaking wrong. When I play this with the session band, we have a little riff in there. It goes like this. And then resolve to F sharp minor, and that's where the song wants to resolve. And with a song like Get Lucky, the hypnotic nature of it comes from the fact that it never really reaches that resting place. It's this cyclic chord progression that wants to keep going and keep going and keep going. You want to keep dancing and dancing until you get lucky, and that never happens. And that's why the chord progression keeps going. So,
Oh man, just flashbacks and now like
PTSD.
I've played that in so many function bands,
Yeah.
and we end on the B minor, and it's always so anticlimactic, and people just kind of like, yeah.
And then you have this band member who solos over it in B minor, and you just want to. Not with my band, but it did happen in the past for sure. Yeah. Good. Moving
I
on.
apologize publicly to every audience member at all those weddings that heard me resolve Get Lucky to B minor.
All right.
Okay. So, any questions coming in on what we've done so far?
Now let's keep moving. We're already an hour in, I believe, and we haven't even touched the last couple of bars.
Oh crap! Okay, keep going.
All right. The reason I made this whole tangent here is because it looks like with this next lick that I'm playing in the typical pentatonic F minor box, but I'm still not in the key of F minor, right? So the notes I'm choosing here, I'm starting on the 5th and sliding into this, going up to the root, and do this little embellishment. And then go from the flat 7 to the root to the 9th. And that sets me up for the next chord, which has this sweep in it. And we can talk about the picking here a little bit. It's once again, it's not this type of sweep that is just at random tempo. It's very specifically 6 tuplets. If anybody has trouble finding this, we're in bar 13 to 14. So bar 13 is this. Interesting, I just played it with a different fingering, which really lets you in on my thought process because I'm really just trying to get these notes out. I'm hearing, even after I've wrote the solo, I'm hearing this. But I actually have to remind myself that it was intended to be played like this, because that sets me up for the sweep. And the sweep is this classic major shape. We have 2 notes on the high E string, which is the B flat and the G. Then we have E flat on the B string and B flat on the G string. And I play these notes up and down, or down and up, I should say. So we go from the top to the bottom and from the bottom to the top. And this is, yes, I'm already seeing somebody mention this in the chat. This is the Malmsteen way of sweeping this, right? So I'm going downstroke, pull off, then I'm going upstroke, and then I go 3 downstrokes. And then I start the lick over with an upstroke, pull off, upstroke, downstroke, downstroke, downstroke. The reason I'm doing this is because the only time I'm changing strings is with an upstroke escape, meaning I can have my pick slanted down and don't have to do this awkward dance of the right hand where I have to change the direction all the time. So the cool thing is that the B string gets its discrete stroke. It's not a sweep there. And having that discrete stroke, I feel like grounds me rhythmically. So I can play 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah? I can really nail that rhythm down. And I do the same thing when going from E flat major to B. Here I don't play a straight up B flat major arpeggio like this. That would be viable too, but instead I want to have a little more open sound. So I go root, 5th, 4th, root. So I play a B sus 4. Like this, okay? Whole thing goes. Yeah, does that make sense? Like that.
Sorry, just had a really important thing that I've got to mention. Someone's asked if they can watch this back later. We can't leave this up on the channel because it'll clutter things up. So if you want the replay link, you've got to register. You've got to become one of the registered people. So it's guitarvivo.com/rock, and it'll ask you to sign up for this event. And if you sign up, yeah, then you'll be able to watch this whenever you want.
We're also going to put it up. We're gonna edit out some of the clutter, and we're gonna also have better audio than the stream. So we're also recording the guitar proper, so you can have a much better sound than on the stream.
Yeah, so if you register that link in a few days, once we've managed to get everything nice and tidy and we've cropped out any mistakes, we'll send you a nice polished version.
Yeah, or any of the massive tangents, or technical errors or whatever. Yes. Okay, one last time. It gives you this. Yeah. It's the same picking pattern on both chords. Sounds really cool. For those who want to watch the technique really slow, I'm going to do it one last time slow. Like that. Alrighty. And that leads us to the last line, starting on the 3rd of F minor. And I kind of bend up into the 5th of the A flat major chord there. But I leave that chord sounding a little bit open because I'm actually resting on the sharp 11 of that chord, which brings us back to this concept we talk about in the book that often with the 4 chords, such as the A flat here, or the 6th chord rather, I do like to target the color tones. Once again, not a conscious decision. It's just what it is. All right, one last time, I'm going to play that lick for you. Like that. Okay. And that leads us into the last run. 3 notes per string, starting on F. Like this. It goes down, up, down, up, down, up. And leads you into the major 3rd of the A flat chord, and that is the solo right there. We got it.
That vibrato. Oh
yeah, it's so awesome because you land on the 4th finger, and you have all these other fingers to support it.
Vicious. Okay, so guys, we'll open up to general Q&A now. I know we've got some questions from earlier.
Yes.
We've got some other things. First, though, if anyone does have any questions on what we've played, we'll hit those. But yeah, we'll start
Let's not
making
forget about this little bad boy right here.
So
Couple words.
Basically,
Publisher and co-author.
you'll hear me plug it a lot because I'm so proud of it.
It's a fantastic book. It's a truly fantastic book. I can say this because we went all out in the creation of this book, and thanks to Luke's contribution, it's better than anything I could have ever come up with on my own. Like, I feel like our skill sets are so complementary of each other, and we came up with something that is greater than the sum of its parts, the sum of our parts. My contribution and yours, we put those two things together, our expertises, and man, I wish I had had this book when I was in my teens learning rock guitar. I mean, this is really monumental in the first of all with the scope that it covers. I want to talk about this really quick about the way this book is designed. We have basically put two books into a single book. We have a whole first section with 4 different styles of backing tracks. And I played 2 solos over each of those backing tracks, one advanced and the other one intermediate. So there's something for anybody to latch onto. It's not for beginners, that's for sure. It's for intermediate and advanced players. And we've also included analyses of these solos, full analyses, long texts with bar by bar analysis. I've also created a bunch of signature licks for each of those tracks that are like super cool when you want to challenge yourself on a technical level and want to add to your vocabulary. What you're going to find all throughout this book is like this reference right here says Concept 22. So I'm talking about Blues Rock Ballad Lick number 4. And it says it makes use of the left-right pentatonic concept, Concept 22. You go to the back of the book, go to Concept 22, and what you're going to find is me talking about left-right pentatonic sequencing, 2 pages of just that. And it gives you a real in-depth analysis of that concept, and you have it tied in with real-life examples that are taken from the solos and licks. So I don't think anything like this has been quite done before, certainly not to that extent on that scope. That's why I can honestly say I'm really, really proud of it, and I couldn't have done it without Luke. And yeah,
you're too kind. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, likewise, I couldn't have done it without you, obviously, for obvious reasons. But I think there's just a couple of things that I really want to mention about it, which is what we talk about. It's not a book that goes, here I'm on this chord, I'm playing this scale. Here I'm on this chord, I'm playing this mode. It's really conceptual. Mm-hmm. So we give you all these examples, but then here's the kind of things we talk about: meta soloing, sequencing, inverse sequencing, pedal notes, chromaticism. We go into his picking, offbeat accenting. Where are you going to find a rock soloing book that talks to you about accenting offbeats and like what to do? Chord tone soloing, sticking the landing, target tones, approaches, enclosures, suspensions, common and distinct notes, half-step connections, anticipate. It just goes on and on, but it's the things that no one's talking about, but you're getting asked about every single day because it's so key to how you think in a modern melodic rock sound. So
most other schools of rock, schools of rock. That sounds funny when you say it like that. But most of these other schools will kind of hyperfixate on buzzwords such as alternate picking, sweeping, tapping, bending. And of course, some of that coincides with this book, but we're really going a lot deeper. And we're really trying to analyze the thought process that happens when I come up with a solo like this, or when I improvise a solo. A lot of these solos in this book are also improvised, and we're backpedaling and analyzing those and what went into that solo. And I feel like it's dissecting rock guitar playing on a much deeper level than just throwing a bunch of buzzwords at you, and then what are you going to do with that? Alternate picking, fantastic. Here's an alternate picking. Like, what are you going to do with that? It really teaches you the very core fundamentals of being not just a rock musician, but a musician overall. Like, I use these concepts whether I play fusion, rock, jazz, pop, metal, doesn't matter.
We've had some people say they've ordered it and it's arriving Saturday or Sunday. Guys, I've put my email in that chat. Email me what you think. I love hearing it.
And by the way, a
I
lot of
love.
people had a question about how to access the material. There is a link right down the middle of the book and a QR code. You can access that. We've had some people on Amazon complain about how there are none of the multimedia files. They're completely there. All you need to do is follow the instructions in the book before you leave a negative review on Amazon.
Yeah, I do get some people emailing me like, "Oh, I couldn't find it. I tried this link and they've typed the link wrong." So, but here's the other funny thing: is there 2 or 3 90-minute masterclasses in there now? I can't remember.
We have 6 hours of masterclass content. We have 2 90-minute masterclasses that I gave for Guitar Vivo throughout the years, and then we have another 90-minute masterclass that deals with the contents of this book specifically. We do have 20 signature licks. They all come with video. They all come with backing tracks. We have 4 backing tracks, fast and slow. We have how many solos? 8 complete solos.
8 complete, and the tracks are great.
Videos for all of it. Yeah.
And you've got that track, that mashup track like Pink Floyd and John Mayer. The tracks are cool. Anyway, guys, let's have some questions. So let's see what you guys are talking about. So O'Neill said, great book, pretty unique, informative, and practical. My question is regarding your guitar tone. It is clean with a little overdrive.
Yeah.
That's his perception. Yeah. What are you really focusing on to achieve this tone?
Well, it's more gainy than you think. I just dial back the distortion with the volume pot, and that works really well with a single core neck pickup. This is my new Ibanez MMN1 signature guitar, and I've been playing that a lot as of late for that exact reason. It's like the ability to go from a heavy distorted sound to a beautiful broken up clean sound is just second to none with these super responsive Seymour Duncan pickups. The way I achieve it, man, you got to find an amp that is really transparent, especially that has like super tight low end. If the low end is too flubby, which can be the most awesome thing in the world. If you think about a Mesa Boogie Duo rectifier, if you play down-tuned heavy power chords with that flubby, slow, low end is the coolest thing in the world, but it's not great for cleaning up a sound and getting that immediate punchy attack. You're gonna have to have a distortion that is really tidy in the low end frequencies. And then, yeah, you got to find an amp that compresses nicely when you hit it hard and that backs off nicely as you back off with your playing and volume.
Awesome. So we've got a couple of questions here. Someone said, bought the book, currently working on chapter 2. I have so much fun learning it, but I kind of wish the book had a 5th chapter on jazz fusion style soloing. I actually think what the book talks about, this is really interesting for you guys. I was a rock player and then I went to jazz uni so I could learn what I wanted to bring back to rock. And I think that's kind of where the book lives. It shows what you took from a really sophisticated learning of voice leading and improvisation from jazz and brought back to rock. I think it's all kind of, essentially, it's demystifying that.
A lot of the terminology I use, enclosures, passing tones, target tones, that's all coming from jazz. Even tetratonics, all these things, all these concepts you find in jazz. And I apply them to chord progressions and riffs and rhythms that are commonly associated with rock music. And I combine them with the typical rock blues idioms. So all you're going to really have to do is apply these same concepts to the chord progressions that you'll find in jazz fusion, and you should be good to go.
Got a question about this solo. Bar 16, do you release the bend before the slide?
Oh my God.
Do you know?
Figure that out. Oh yeah. All right. Yeah, that's a very good point. I like this. Let me sit up straight here. I'm not even sure. Oh, okay. This is one of those things I mentioned earlier. These things, the way I execute these lines tends to change over the years. Today I bend up, then I did this trill. Kind of as I go down, it sounds really horrible when you do it slow. Like that, it sounds really, really bad. But when you do it fast, it sounds cool. If I go back to the video, I might find that I play like this. with a slide up and down as I release. So it's happening at the same time. So I bend up a half step. It's a Michael Landau thing. And as I slide, I release the bend.
Nice. Good question. Thanks.
A fantastic question. Very paying great attention to detail here. I think if you apply that attention to detail to all of your playing, you're going to be golden, man.
Morgan has asked, you mentioned your inner voice is a significant part of how you generate your ideas. I wondered your opinion on how to develop your inner voice into something you enjoy listening to. Or maybe just how to develop your inner voice anyway.
Yeah, because you know what sometimes as musicians tend to do is that we assume that what we know to be true is something that everybody knows. And if you want to teach somebody how to improvise, the first thing they need to have is an inner voice that makes them that guides them towards something they want to play. You first need to have an idea what you want to play. So if you're struggling to find great ideas of what you want to play, I can really strongly advise you that you should listen to music, and listen to music very, very actively. Listen to great jazz soloists. One of my favorite soloists of all time is the incredible virtuoso named Clifford Brown, and he's a jazz trumpet virtuoso, and he died in his early 20s, unfortunately, and he only left a few recordings, but they're among the best solos I've ever heard on any instrument ever. If you listen to his solo on Pent Up House with Sonny Rollins, that trumpet solo has had such a profound influence on me, and it has largely informed what I hear in my head nowadays. I've also transcribed that solo and I've played it on guitar. And a lot of those, not necessarily the exact ideas, but just sharpening my ear to target certain chords, for instance, might be coming from that solo. So yeah, and also doing your ear training work, your solfeggio, like I can see numbers go by in front of my head as I play over chord changes. Like, to give you an example, let's say we have chord progression like C minor, F minor, G minor, C minor, and I play one note over that. I play, let's say, D. I think 9 over C, 6 over F, 5 over G, 9 over C. The same with, let's say, a major 2-5-1. I play an F over all these chords. I hear, or I think, minor third over D minor, flat 7 over G7, and now I'm never gonna ever play that note over the C major, because I know it's gonna sound awful. Because I know before I hit that note that it's gonna be the fourth, and my knowledge and my experience tells me that it's not a note that you want to hit on a C major 7 chord. So I know to resolve that down to the third. But if I keep a steady note over all chords, let's say the E, I'm not thinking E, E, E. Instead, I'm thinking 9, 6, 3. If that makes sense. Yeah. So that is something, obviously, that takes a lot of brain power, but becomes second nature if that's all you ever think about, even when you're in the shower.
Nice. Got a question here.
Yeah.
When you're arranging for your session band, how do you make sure that the soundscape isn't too full? With my cover band, we have 2 guitarists and keyboard, and to me, it feels like we have too much stuff going on at most points.
Yeah, you can work around this problem in 2 instances, I feel like. The first one is the playing together, and it's really helpful to have very experienced musicians, like especially 2 guitars plus keyboards. There's a real danger of stepping on each other's toes. Fortunately, I have a band where everybody has this kind of level of training as myself. And everybody has really good ears. Everybody knows about inversions, about different comping styles, for instance. So if I play full chords, I mean, Eye of the Tiger is a great example. You have 2 guitars, right? You have one guitar playing, and then you have another guitar playing with a clean tone. These 2 parts don't step on each other. So the best way to prevent this and to come up with a mix that mixes itself is to have a really powerful, smart arrangement. And then, of course, if the arrangement ain't so great, you got to fix it in the mix. One of them's got to go.
So, yeah, just on that, do you arrange every part for your session band?
I arrange the structures of the songs. We're going to have X amount of bars solo after the second chorus, and then we're going to go into the interlude section and loop that and jam on that. I do that. I do the big picture stuff, and everything else is not arranged. It is all off the cuff. It is in the moment, playing together, listening to each other, and knowing the songs well, to be able to know when to stick to the original and when not to.
Nice. Okay, we got one here. Hanley Webb here from the UK. Good place to be. I'm 12 years old. When you were younger, who were your guitar icons?
I know Hanley. He's played one of my solos. He's a really good young player. Fantastic young lad. He has a very bright future ahead of him, for sure. Who are my idols? Same idols as of now. I'm a bit old-fashioned. I don't go with the times. I still listen to John Petrucci, Steve Morse, Pat Metheny, Steve Lukather, Mike Stern, George Benson, Eric Johnson, Joe Bonamassa. Some of my recent influences are modern blues players such as Josh Smith, Art Meneses, Philip Sayce, Eric Gales, Kirk Fletcher, those types of players. Those are some of my more modern influences, but I still listen to all the old guys. Still love them more than anything. Schofield. Man, so
Philip Sayce. Philip Sayce does not get enough credit.
Oh man, he's so good. Love him.
Yeah. Actually, I really like this question. Someone's asked, what concepts and techniques should you know before you get the book? That's really interesting. Yeah. What's the foundation people should have?
That is a really good question, because we advertise this as being for intermediate and advanced players. The problem is, in the non-classical realm, those terms are not 100% correctly defined, right? There's no hard line between a beginner and an intermediate and an advanced player. What I would suggest is, first of all, you need to be able to tune your instrument. You need to be able to read and understand reading on a small scale, but you have to be able to read rhythm. You have to be able to read tablature. You have to certainly be able to understand eighth notes, 16th notes, dotted quarters, dotted eighths, triplets, these types of note values. You should be able to understand how a chord is constructed, how a triad is constructed, and have a baseline of technique. And I think the bar isn't too high. The thing is, you can get lost in this book and go right to the end game, end level stuff, and skip on all the parts that are important to at your current development right now. So it's kind of your responsibility to pick out the things that are just out of your reach enough to where you can still grasp it if you stretch yourself, but to where it's not impossible and frustrating. I think it's what you make of it is really the what do you think? It's really the crux.
Well, here's the thing. As with a lot of the books I put out, one of the big problems I have with how people perceive them is when you're used to video lessons, you're used to being able to watch for 60 minutes and understand everything at all points along the way. When we do a book, we write it where we want you to look at a paragraph and then go away and sit on that for a bit, and see value in a sentence. And I think people forget that the mentality for what we've written is kind of like, if you come across something that is out of your reach, just don't go to it yet. Just hang back, and work on where you're at.
Yes.
So the value is kind of like this. This is we put into this book virtually everything. Well, we put in what you're thinking about 99% of the time. I don't know what other stuff you do, but I think this is a large amount of what you use as a professional guitarist. So we can't kid ourselves and say you're just going to be able to pick it up and go through the whole thing and everything will be as easy as everything else.
No, I mean,
there's variations of it.
This is a book that should stick with you for years, honestly. It's not something that you go through in a week. This is the work of a few years cut out for you. And I love doing video lessons and everything, but the thing I really, really love about the book and the written format is that we can choose every word so incredibly carefully. Every definition we use, every sentence that is in this book has been thought over and rewritten numerous times to give you the most precise information that you can find. And as Luke said, you can literally stop after half a paragraph and get away with so much information that you can digest that for days.
And that's also just another thing to talk about, what we've done in this session. We've gone through this whole solo. We've shown you different concepts. They're not all the same level. Like that chromatic approach concept could take you a while, whereas other things you could get. Don't be afraid to zero in on the smallest thing.
Then that's really advanced.
You might need to zero in on that and make that your focus for a few weeks, but then you get out of that what you put in, right? So don't be afraid to pause when you get the replay and stuff and take away little bits of information. Right.
Shall we? I think we've passed the 90-minute mark here. Shall we wrap things up?
I have a controversial last question.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Because we've been past 90 minutes, I can crop this out and it's still 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Why Ibanez and not Fender?
Why Ibanez and a Fender? Because this is my Ibanez signature guitar, and I'm a 90s kid. And as a 90s kid, the Ibanez guitar is the holy grail of guitars. It's the guitar that when you would get the catalog from the music store, you would go through it and you see all these guitar heroes, Petrucci, Vai, Satriani, all these amazing players wielding their Ibanez X's. That is simply the highest point of guitar that you can reach as somebody who is a lover of the 90s. To me, it's not just nostalgia, though. These are cutting edge, super modern guitars. They're highly functional. Every one you pick up off the shelf is great. And yeah, I have, like, as you can see, I have a bunch of them. I love all of them.
And yeah, when you were going through your heroes as well, it's like Ibanez, Petrucci,
yeah,
Gilbert.
absolutely. Andy Timmons. Yeah. Andy Timmons,
Yeah,
John Scofield, George Benson, Pat Metheny.
That's it. So important things before we leave, guys. If you want the replay, because we're gonna have to take this off YouTube, it is guitarvivo.com/rock, and you can put your email in. If you've already signed up, if you're one of the people that was on the email list, that'll get sent out in a couple of days once we've had a chance to edit it and get rid of the fluff like this. This won't be in there. So maybe if I zone out towards the end, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in, Martin. Thank you for just being one of those guys that's so open with information and your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, really, really awesome for you all to tune in. I had a blast on my first YouTube live stream. Or if you're watching this back, thanks so much for coming onto this website, leaving your email address and all that stuff. Hope you got something out of it. Check out Modern Rock Guitar Soloing. Leave me a couple of comments, what you want to see in the future. Do you want me to do more live streams like these, etc.? Check out the new video I just released with Tom Quayle. We were playing an awesome duet of Billie Jean. That's just out on the YouTube channel yesterday. Yeah, having a great time doing all these things for you. Thanks so much. So many of you joined us today. It's a real pleasure, man. I am absolutely flattered. Thanks so much, guys.
We've already got requests for what they want broken down next. So
yeah, man, let's do this again. Let's do this again sometimes. I'm totally open. I had a really, really great time.
On behalf of myself and everyone, I'm sure we can all say we also had a great time.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you all so much, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon, everyone. Bye-bye.